Welcome to the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. Hello. Welcome again to our second Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, where we share what we have learned through experience, how to add more joy to our lives. I'm your co-host, Judy Forder, and I'm here with my partner in peace and co-host, Kris Burke.
Hi, everybody.
Sorry about that. Today's topic is how to reconnect to your joy. And Kris and I were really excited about last week's show. We had some viewer comments, and one of the viewer comments was you gave us a lot of information on how to identify stress and anxiety and the zones that we were in, yet didn't give us a lot of help in moving forward in what we do with that. So I laughed and said, "Oh, a cliffhanger. I won't even try to pretend like we did that on purpose."
But it's a marathon, not a sprint. Our show is a marathon, so we'll be covering a lot, right, over a long period of time.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we thought we'd give a little recap of what we shared in the show last week and then take those next steps forward. And, we were talking about anxiety and stress, and we identified zone 1 and zone 2 behaviors after explaining what zone 1 and zone 2 were. We will bring the map back up in a minute. But we were able to identify the emotions that are tied to stress and anxiety. We were able to identify how those emotions play out through expression. And then we were able to identify zone 2 behaviors and where we go to help pull ourselves out of zone 1 and bring ourselves more present and acquire a few more tools in how to deal with stress and anxiety. Mm-hmm. Kris, would you like to take over from there?
Yeah, sure. So then we talked a little bit when we were talking about joy. We're going to be talking about zone 3, which is where we become curious and open-minded again. Sometimes we think of it as where you connect with your inner child. It's that natural state, right? Anybody who's spent 5 minutes with a 2-year-old knows that the natural state that seems ready to go right from the beginning in we humans is curiosity. We want to understand our world. We want to understand other people. We want to understand ourselves. And we're open-minded because we don't have preconceived ideas about what the answer should be or should not be. And so we're really open to whatever it is that that we learn or that we experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Revert back to our childhood play.
Yeah. And if you can remember what those things were that you loved in childhood, chances are as an adult, we might approach things differently. But often the things that we gravitated toward, the things that we really lost ourselves in childhood, will still be the things that can capture our attention and engage our hearts as adults.
Absolutely. So would we like to pull up the map again?
Sure.
Show our viewers our map.
Yeah, thank you.
It's like magic.
It is like magic. I love our map. Just
Yeah. So as you can see in the lower, I'll call it the rainbow corner. Zone 1 is all instincts. It's where we are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I know for me, when I'm in zone 1, I feel overwhelmed, frustrated, anger. I quickly go to anger if I'm in zone 1. Shame, guilt, all of those things. And then we have zone 2, which is right above zone 1, where we have the maze and the castle, and that's intellect. So that is a zone where we attempt to make things happen our way and take control so that we can stay out of zone 1, because in zone 1 we feel completely out of control. Mm-hmm. Zone 2 is like, okay, I call them survival techniques. What survival techniques can I put in place so that I feel safe and I don't end up back in zone 1? Mm-hmm. And it gives me a sense of control of my environment and myself.
Yeah. And Judy, can you talk a little bit about why we have this lovely, perfect picture of this storybook house in zone 1.
Because it is in our childhood where we learn behaviors, beliefs from our environment,
Mm.
from our family, from society, from our communities. All those, our subconscious is constantly working and seeing what's around us, feeling the energy around us. So that is when we're most impressionable. And that's when we develop our belief system. And
Mhm.
all of those things influence our beliefs and the ones that we hold today.
Absolutely. And when you look at that perfect storybook house, I know many of us, when we first look at that, might have a very strong reaction to it because maybe, thinking back to childhood, we don't get that image. We wouldn't paint that picture of
No, no
childhood.
offense.
Right? And yet, the collective consciousness, the story of childhood, kind of what we see in a lot of movies and on television, and in children's books, does kind of say, everybody's living this way. So
Mhm.
we might be comparing our own childhood to that and saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my family? So we like to put this right here and say, let's have that conversation right up front. People were struggling. Most humans are struggling with something. And as children, we're getting exposed to that struggle, and so we're learning about it. So the storybook version of childhood is not super accurate.
No, no. And yeah, the influence of what society tells us what normal should be and what it should look like. I mean, that is falling apart quickly,
Yeah,
has been falling apart for years. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, we're very supportive of allowing you to even investigate the realm of maybe I'm not broken.
Mm.
There is no wrong or right, there just is.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's such a good point. In zone 2, actually, where the intellect is in the lead, things tend to be very black or white. It's this or that. There tend to be sides, distinction, separation. There's conflict. There's right or wrong. It's just the way the intellect operates. It's not good or bad that it operates that way. It's just the way it happens. So it's good to know that's going to happen there, and it's a hard place to ever get to agreement or compromise or resonance, or however you think about people with different beliefs or ideas getting into a place of synchronicity. That's a hard place to do it just because of the nature of the intellect. It doesn't make it good or bad, but the intellect is always looking at its idea of imaginary normal, like Judy said, and comparing what's happening in our lives to that imaginary normal. And then it's telling us something's wrong and we know it's you.
Yeah.
That's how it generally operates, right? So it's helpful to just know that any ideas about what normal is are pretty fictional. There are 8 billion people in the world and we're all different. So normal is much of an illusion that the intellect likes because it makes it feel secure, that it has a better understanding of things, or more control over things than maybe it does.
And yes, and in zone 1, a lot of that is about safety.
Hmm.
So zone 2, we have found, is all about, like I said, acquiring survival tools, techniques, boundaries, ways that you do things that help you feel safe,
Hmm.
and help you feel safer in who you are, because we have a society that tells us that being different is wrong. You're broken.
Yeah, so not a lot of joy going on in zones 1 and 2,
No.
right? So when we're looking for joy, when we're looking for where's the joy, it's inside of you. But when we're looking to experience it, we're not going to find it in zone 1 or 2.
No, we're not. And I know I was a zone tour and was actually able finally to look around and say, I have so much in my life that I should, here we go, shoulding ourselves, but should be able to be happy about and should be feeling joy. And I
Mm.
wasn't.
Mm.
And that's what started this whole journey for me was like, and it did. It started with what's wrong with me
Right.
that I can't appreciate and allow myself to be happy with the life that I have because it was a good life,
Hmm.
and I can say that I struggled allowing myself to feel joy the day my mother died. From
Hmm.
that day forward, I had this belief that I will never experience happiness and joy again.
Hmm.
And it held true until that day. I was like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah, absolutely. Any kind of loss. Divorce. I have a couple of those. And any sort of, whether it's somebody passing or any sort of separation, losing a job that is dear to you or provides a sense of identity, retirement, that can be a huge sense of loss for people, right? And all of these losses can put us in zone 1 and 2, where we say, I don't feel like I think I should. So therefore, there's a problem. There's something wrong with me, and I need to fix it. And as soon as we get into the thinking of there's a problem, it's with me, and I need to be fixed, it becomes really difficult to get out of zone 1 and zone 2 thinking, because that thinking just perpetuates the feeling of danger, the feeling of impending doom. Something's wrong. It's wrong with me. I need to fix it. So joy is kind of it's the antidote to the kryptonite, right? I don't know why Superman just popped in, but this happens with me.
Yeah, and a lot of it is worthiness. Am I worthy
Mm,
of the joy? And that
yeah,
comes from a lot of different things.
absolutely. Yeah. And when we peel away, when we just get quiet, when we just find quiet, usually people find it in nature, and we're going to talk more about these things. But when we find some real quiet inside and you pay attention to what you're actually feeling in your body when there's some peace of mind, you might be surprised to find out what's kind of there all the time, just happily humming along under all of the thoughts that there's something wrong, that there's something that needs to be fixed, um, that there's danger lurking. So, and we can say it. Lots of people can say it. This show is really about helping you to experiment and experience it for yourself. Because once we experience something, we don't actually believe it. We know it, right? That's how we naturally learn, through experience. And then it's not. Nobody can ever convince you it's not true, because it is. You've experienced it.
Exactly. And it becomes part of your truth.
Hmm.
And that's what we really need to start focusing on. That's, you know, when we say peaceful empowerment works, it's because we become peaceful when we can trust our truth,
Hmm.
trust the guidance that we receive for ourselves, trust that knowing of what is the next right best step for me. When you can trust that, it literally feels like the road ahead just unfolds for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a big part of that is joy.
Hmm.
Joy is a higher frequency, it's a higher vibration. It's a place where in if you're experiencing joy, you attract more things that bring you joy.
Mm.
So when we focus on everything that's wrong with us, we attract even more things that are wrong with us, more
Right.
things that we can judge ourselves for, and we lose all track of any gleam or glimmer of something that might be right with us.
Yeah. Absolutely. I heard Greg Braden talking yesterday about the scientific experiments they've been doing on the communication between the heart and the head. And they've actually found that the heart does more thinking, like more higher level thinking than the brain does. That the heart does the feeling thinking about the experience and sends information to the brain. More information goes from the heart to the brain that's involved in creating our experience than the other way around, which I thought was pretty fascinating.
Very much.
Um, but we're very feeling central. Our emotions, the emotions that we're feeling in a moment, tell us what thoughts and experiences are coming. The not what thoughts, which zone, right? So if I'm feeling afraid and defensive, what's coming next is going to be something that matches my feelings of fear and defensiveness. If I'm feeling joyful, what comes next is going to be something that matches that. And Judy and I were talking yesterday about, is that because there's sort of all of these infinite options available to you all the time, and that you notice the one that you're resonating with in the moment? Or is it that it actually changes? And of course, we don't know. But we kind of concluded with, what difference does it make? If you really pay attention to and prioritize, you're paying attention to your feelings. And if you're having good feelings, what you will notice and engage with are good things. That's a better experience. That's a better life.
Yes, absolutely. And then one of the biggest tools, suggestions, we'll say, that comes up when I'm working with clients, the first question will be, when's the last time you experienced joy? And you all probably will not be shocked, but they sit there in front of me and they're like, I don't even really know. I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you,
Hmm.
because we get so wrapped up in the day to day, the survival, that we lose sight of joy. That's what we're here for. That's why we're having this human experience. We're supposed to be experiencing love and joy and happiness. And that's been lost. It's been lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. And it's funny when you say that. I remember maybe as recently as 2 years ago, hearing something like that could make me angry.
Hmm.
This idea about it was about joy, because I didn't understand the power, and it's one of the reasons that the show is named what it is. I didn't understand that when I was in my joy and a peaceful mind, that I really would have freedom, freedom of choice in a way that I couldn't conceive of at the time. That peace and joy was not about checking out and having a lollipop and blowing bubbles. Although if that brings you joy, hey, that's wonderful. It's about checking in. Joy is about really getting inside and getting to know the truth of yourself and what lights you up, and honoring and respecting that and taking it where it leads, so that you become more and more um, familiar with who you are, until you start to actually fall in love with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about making joy a priority.
Yeah.
And many have sat in front of me and like, how do I schedule that into a day? And it's not about scheduling into a day, because what you determine can bring you joy can be as simple as listening to your favorite song. It could be drinking your coffee on the deck listening to the birds sing. It could be sitting with your back against a tree. It could be having a conversation with a good friend. Whatever lights you up is what lights you up, and it doesn't have to be a ceremonial 2-hour event. If you have
Right.
time for that, great. But if you don't have time for that, then you pick those little things that light your heart up. And
Yes.
I always say, light you up and make your heart sing. Those things are important. And for you to set that as a priority in your life, 5 minutes out of your day, 2 minutes out of your day, to do something that brings you joy.
Hmm.
Dance, 30-second dance parties.
Yeah.
Anything that will ignite that light in your heart.
Hmm. Yeah. Remember that there's a song, uh, Pharrell Williams. There's a happy song.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times during my journey when it's like clap if you're happy, and there were times in my journey when I would get up in the morning and I would be like, oh, I am not feeling my joy today. And I would flick that song on and I would dance and my dog would dance and bark and my husband would be like, I can't even see this right now. But by the time, meanwhile, he's kind of snickering because who cannot find this kind of precious? And at the end of the song, I would be like, there, I feel better.
Yep. I'm ready to
Now
go.
I'm ready to go. I can have my day now. So
Mhm.
thanks, Pharrell. Shouts out. Yeah.
If you're watching.
Yeah, sure he is. As soon as he hears.
Yes, but joy needs, it make it a priority
Hmm.
and you will benefit.
Yeah. And it's funny, I can talk about I'm wondering if I have dirt on my face. Because one of the things that brings me joy that I had to bring into my life was horses. And it was something that I loved as a child. And so this morning I was actually working with a teacher and some students and working on emotional things with horses. And it's really quite a beautiful thing. So I may have gotten dirt on me. I had a headband on, so my hair's all wonky. And the point is that when you give yourself permission to do what brings you joy, um, you might have to let go of some of the other things, right? So for example, there was a time when I wouldn't leave my house without full makeup. My hair was bleached blonde. Um, there was a way that I just went about presenting myself to the world, and I didn't have to give that up. It was just when I added this other thing that brought me joy, it just became less important to me. Right? It's not like it was a wrong thing or a bad thing. It was just like, "Oh, well, this takes a lot of time and that takes a lot of time, and if I'm feeling a little squished, I gave myself permission to choose what brought me joy." And what I found, I would even go into consulting jobs in companies in New York City with my cowboy boots, not with the horse dirt, but kind of with my cowboy boots and no makeup on. And it was interesting how when I was coming in peace, at peace with myself, with kind of a joy buzz, if you will, people actually responded to me really differently than I expected. They were really receptive. It seemed to put them at ease. So a lot of I don't know, the surface or pretense stuff seemed to just go away because it seemed like I wasn't either energetically or physically dressed for it.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That does
Yeah.
make it does make
So
sense. And the question you ask is, you did your hair and makeup and all that stuff for what?
I literally thought I was not presentable. I was
Mm-hmm.
not acceptable in the world. I had a list of flaws,
Mm-hmm.
that these things were unacceptable, could not be presented to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to fix them, very zone two,
Mm-hmm.
before I went out into the world for fear of being judged. And what was interesting is that the the judging was happening. I mean, who was doing the judging? I was doing the judging. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't protect myself from it. And I think the harder I tried to make myself beyond judgment, the more I separated or isolated myself from people. Instead of connecting with them, I was more like something you would look at and judge if you could.
You were giving an invitation for people to judge you.
Yes, 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 exactly. Because I was trying so hard.
Yes.
For fear. I mean, it was fear that was driving me. What I really wanted was to connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not to say that anybody who does makeup and hair and cares about is
No.
wrong. There is no right or wrong.
Mm-mm.
It's about what it means to you and why you're doing it. If you're doing it because it lights you up and it serves you and it brings you joy, keep doing it.
Yes.
Keep doing it. If you're doing it to try to make yourself more presentable to the world because the biggest judge in the world of you lives in your head, that's something to look at.
Yes. Yeah, that is such a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no right or wrong.
It's right or wrong for you, and you can know based on your experience, how does it feel? Right? And in the beginning, when I stopped, you know, doing the hair and makeup stuff, I was experimenting and it was hard. And I went out in the world thinking, oh, this is going to be so bad. And it took me some time to realize actually, nobody even seems to be noticing other than they're being a little less guarded with me.
Mhm.
And so that was my experience, right? So I'm not saying this is the way it is. I'm just saying that was my experience. And so I kept doing it.
Yeah, I mean, what did you found? The more you showed up comfortable with you,
Hmm.
the better responses you got.
Hmm.
So, the more comfortable you are with yourself, whether you're doing hair and makeup or not, it's about the energy that you bring with you.
Yes.
You show up comfortable with you,
Mm-hmm.
it invites other people to be comfortable with you too.
Yes.
We invite the judgment when we tried our best to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
But we invite the comfort as well. When we show up true and authentic, comfortable in our own skin, we invite people that are comfortable with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Where can they find us, Kris?
At masterfulu.com. That's masterfulu.com.
Perfect.
It's not Master Fulu, as one of my clients once said to me. That looks like Master Fulu. And I said, oh, no.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Master Food. I will never forget that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And this is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show.
Yeah, it is. Peaceful empowerment really does work. We can go out into the world and try to force things to happen or control things so that we can feel okay, or we can find that peace and that joy inside, and life will just respond to that in a really different way. It's
Yeah.
pretty
You know
cool.
what, Kris? I'm hearing we need to tie this back to last week's show with stress and anxiety because
Hmm.
we failed to share last week that you literally wrote a book.
I literally did. I literally did. Uh, yeah, I had debilitating panic attacks, which I mentioned last time, and I discovered. I don't think I shared this story about the chimps, did I?
I don't believe so.
No. Okay, so I decided I couldn't live with these panic attacks, and I had doctors tell me, once this starts, it's pretty much the way it's going to be. There's nothing you can do. Take this pill. And I said, I don't really want it. That doesn't work for me, right? So in alignment, that does not bring me joy. So let me see if there's another approach. And so I started doing some research, and I would say my intuition very masterfully took me to an article. It sounds so random, but it took me to an article about scientists studying chimpanzees in the wild and noticing uh, when the chimps would be chased by a jaguar or something, they would all, run up the trees to get away. And the jaguar would grab one of their brethren and they would all start laughing hysterically. And so the scientists said, gosh, are these kind of mean spirited chimps or what's going on here? Because that's not really funny. But then immediately after the laughter, they would start grooming one another. They would return to a state of calm. And so physiologically, so one of the scientists said, I wonder if that's some sort of physiological bridge to take them out of fight or flight, which is when We have all kinds of chemical reactions happening when we're in fight or flight. Our eyes are dilated, our heart's beating really fast. There's something going on with our diaphragm and calcium levels and all of this kind of stuff that just says, run or fight. And as we talked about a little bit last week, that means that the rational part of your brain actually shuts down and the blood supply goes to your major muscle groups and also to the part of your brain that tells you how to deal with danger: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? um, so when we get triggered into that state, um, that's what anxiety attacks are. And we don't know how, most of us didn't, I did not know how to turn that off. So once it started, I had to just deal with it. And I had lots of techniques, I had lots of coping mechanisms that I had developed. But breathing in a paper bag, driving down the road. I mean, there was some crazy stuff going on, but I was so committed to I am finding my way out. That I read this article and a light went off, and I just said, do you think, the chimpanzees are turning off their fight or flight response and returning to a state of peace and joy, right? And why would we do that? We don't just do that because that's, oh, that's a nice idea or that's fun. We actually do that because that's where we are at ease, which is the opposite of dis-ease, right? Our health, our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health of not just ourselves and our families and our communities, but literally the globe, depend upon us being in that healthy physiological state of mind, being at peace, where we have access to all of our levels of thinking and experiencing, and not just the instinctive reactive ones, or not just the judging, controlling ones. So I heard that the chimpanzees did it, and I said, okay, well, what works for them. I figured, we learned to fly from birds, right? I mean, we didn't build our planes and to flap like they do, though we tried in the beginning and that didn't work. So we had to do something else. But if we had no birds, I don't know that we ever would have thought of flying, right? Or we built submarines to do what the whales do. Again, no whales. I'm not sure we would have thought about going underwater was something we really had to do. So I thought, why not borrow something from the chimpanzees? So the next time that I was driving and I had a panic attack, I forced myself to laugh. And the first thing I discovered is that forcing yourself to laugh when you feel like you're going to drop dead at any moment, a little tricky, but I was committed. So I forced it. I mean, it was literally like that. And I forced my stomach to move the way you would if you were having a really good belly laugh, and almost like a bellows, like working a bellows. And I noticed something interesting happened because when I pushed my stomach out, I automatically took in this deep breath. And by the time I let it out, the attack was over. And I had it described to me by my stepdad, who's a retired surgeon, that actually I had turned off my physiology, turned off the fight or flight. And he talked to me about the diaphragm and calcium levels and hormones and all kinds of things that, I was just like, it worked. Right. So he had all the detail, which I really appreciated him validating what I had experienced. But if he had said, no, you didn't do that, and there's no proof that that worked, I would have said, well, that's not true, right? In my experience, it did work. So that's good enough for me because that's where I'm in charge of my experience. I'm owning my experience, as we say. So after that, everything changed. Just everything, because I wasn't afraid of living in my body anymore.
Ooh, that's huge.
That was so huge because I knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I was literally living in fear all the time because I knew at any moment I could get these awful attacks, and you can't think, and your vision gets a little weird, and, your heart is racing and your palms are sweating and my face would flush. And there'd be all of these signals, and you just feel like, oh my God, at any minute, I'm just going to drop. I went to the emergency room 5 times
Wow.
over the course of maybe 2 years. of dealing with these attacks. So this laughter, I can't even begin. I don't even have, I stopped having the attacks fairly quickly.
Mhm.
Um, and I would imagine it's because the fear of having the attack upped my fear level, which is what caused the attacks,
Mhm.
right? And so it was like a top that had become too tightly spun, and I couldn't, it would take the littlest bit of tightening and boom, full on attack. And as soon as I knew what to do about it, I just relaxed, and it was like the top unwound gently, and I went back to being able to navigate, um, situations in my life without like literally losing my mind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was pretty amazing. I felt grateful.
Yeah, it's amazing that there's a bunch of science to support it, period.
Mhm.
So i- instead of handing out meds, people need to try laughter,
Yeah.
as silly as it may sound. But again, there's science to support it.
Yes. There absolutely is.
Hmm.
And there's, empirical evidence actually means observation and experience.
Hmm.
And that's how science got started,
Hmm.
right? So I'm a big believer in empirical evidence. So when people tell me that something will work or not work, I'll say, okay, I'll go try it,
Hmm.
right? And if it works, then I say, okay, yeah, I get it. My empirical evidence, my scientific research
Hmm.
supports their scientific research. And if I try something and it doesn't work, I say, okay, well, it doesn't work for me. And that's okay. It doesn't make what they said wrong. It just means it doesn't fit me. It doesn't work in my experience. And so I just send it on down the road. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Hmm. Beautiful.
I'm telling you,
So,
these chimps are
what are
brilliant.
the chimps are brilliant. I think we could learn an awful lot more from the animal kingdom. Yes.
Yeah. And actually, that reminds me, if you watch your dog, or your I'm gonna say cat. No, it's more a dog thing. If you watch your dog, if they get startled by something, right after they get startled, they'll shake their whole body. And that's their way of regulating their energy, of shaking off the fear,
Mm.
of letting that go, because that charge of fear will come in. And again, the dog gets like a fight or flight response, and they get charged up for that. And then when they realize, oh, the coast is clear, they shake that off and return themselves to peace of mind and joy. And you'll see the tail wag, which is super joy indicator.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I truly believe that our default setting, if we return to origin, is peace,
Mhm.
peace and joy.
Yeah.
And that's what we're peeling off the layers to get back to,
Yes.
getting rid of the things that distract us and keep
Mhm.
us in a state of fear.
The judgment, you're not good enough to go outside. You have
Mm.
to fix yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
No, poof. Got to get rid of that.
Yes. Exactly.
Actually, and when I say that, get rid of that, it's actually add more joy to your life, right? So Judy has this great symbolism. I always get metaphor, analogy, symbolism wrong, so I'm not even going to try. What's your glass of water thing?
Yeah, well, it was actually something I saw. I don't know, it was a video on Facebook. It was a reel or something where they had a mason jar filled with dirt and a little bit of water. And they said the dirt represents all of the goo, judgment, frustration, anger. And they took a spoon and they were dishing out the soil, the dirt, and you could only get a little bit at a time. And they were like, what would happen if we take this other jar filled with water and pour it in the one with the dirt? And of course it starts flooding that other jar. The dirt comes running out of the top of it, and before you know it, there's very little dirt left. And it's like, that's joy. when you take your life where you feel like you have very little joy and intentionally add more joy, it does more to get rid of the lower stuff that you're working so hard to get rid of. When you just flood it with that joy, it naturally starts to overflow and leave. So that's why this is all about how to reconnect you to your joy. If you focus on the joy, make it an intention, make it a priority in your everyday life. Just 2 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. That feeling, you're going to want more of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're thinking, I don't have time for joy, or I don't deserve joy, or some of the things that I used to think, then you can also always be really honest with yourself, and you can say something like, I'm willing to try joy,
Mhm.
or do I have time for joy in my day? Or is there value in having joy? And let, your subconscious mind, life, the universe, however you think about it, let it answer your questions. Be honest about your questions, because when we try to force ourselves to do something that we're not really, I don't know, bought into, that we haven't set a clear intention, it doesn't work.
Mm-mm. No. Open mind, open heart, and
Yeah.
believe that you're worth the effort.
Mhm.
You have to believe you're worth the effort.
Yeah.
And if you need help doing that, Kris, where can they come?
Ah, yeah. Right? It's like magic. You could come to Masterful You and take a workshop with us, or take an Own Your Experience class. Yeah, there it is, masterfulu.com. Um, we've had some tremendous experiences and breakthroughs lately. Just absolutely. I mean, we leave classes lately just, with our mouths hanging, like, wow. People are, they're letting go of their pain and their struggle, and they're engaging in their joy, and they're giving themselves permission to love themselves and love their lives. And they're doing it. I mean, we're there to support and provide tools, and to tell them that we see their worthiness even when they can't, and that we know that they can find their way even when in the beginning we might feel like we can't. But they're really doing it. They're finding their peace and their joy, and they're owning it, and
Yes.
it's completely transforming their lives. And as we say that, because we know everybody's, change. Oh, change could be bad. It's transforming their lives, but every step of the way, they're saying, "Yes, I'll keep this. No, I'm okay with that going." They're,
Mm.
it's not happening to them. When you're in that place of empowerment, you are choosing.
Yes. It's happening for them.
Yeah.
It, they're setting themselves free. So when is our next workshop? And then we have to wrap it up for the day.
Yeah. Our next workshop is on Monday, uh,
June
at,
5th?
is it June 5th?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I was out
Yep.
playing horses and not in left brain mode.
Yes.
So yeah, it's on Monday, June 5th from 7 to 9 p.m. And it's at masterfulu.com. And Judy and I will be in the workshops. Yeah, as well as other members of our community, who, some people come to every workshop we ever do, even though they've taken the classes. So it's a great experience. Yeah. Oh,
Perfect.
and you cannot be wrong. Can I just say, you cannot be wrong in the workshop. So if you come and you don't want to share, or you don't want to have, you decide you don't want your camera on, you'd rather listen, or whatever happens in the moment, you just tell us, and we say, okay, you do you. Trust you.
Whatever is right and perfect for you. And again, it's www.masterfulu.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you and communing with you again next Thursday.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, we're out of time. So sad.
Yeah, we were.
See you next week.